Sunny here, and happy Pride Month! I hope you're all having fun celebrating and spending time with your partners if you have them. Today I am celebrating by doing one of my favorite things to do, and that is draw fairies. Not the Disney kind, the Pam's Labyrinth kind. I'll be drawing up the characters and building up a plot for them as I go along. So without further ado, let's get started. So first off, the character I am using is technically stolen from my past self, as he was originally a sketchbook character of mine who I made while I was binge watching the Hilda series at like 15 years old. Which if you've never seen, please go check it out. Kids show or not, it's really well written. I think it's still on Netflix, right? It should be on Netflix. If you don't have Netflix, I'm sure you can find it somewhere else. Anyways, he was originally a Mara, but for the sake of turning him into his own thing, we're sticking with the species, but leaning more towards the Norse interpretation. I thought it'd be fun to work a little mythology into the species, since Hilda doesn't really delve into it that deeply, other than that one episode where Hilda's trying to figure out why the Mara is attacking her friend, David, but besides from that, I think it'd be really fun to kind of just delve into the real mythology behind them, and kind of give them more of a reason for existing, because, I don't know, I feel like that could be a fun little side episode if I ever made this into a real storyline. For his story, I was thinking to give him more of that, kind of businessman allure, where he's living in a wooded side of Texas, and runs a tourist trap called Sight Marewood, which is the equivalent to those hotels that will tell you, like, hey, spend the night here in this haunted hotel and you will get $500. That sort of situation. It's basically that, but a haunted campground. And he likes to use this to lure people in so he can feed on them, because he's too lazy to go out and find people to scare. The trick is, he makes them pay out rent for a night, but he scares them off the property before they can complete the challenge. So he gets money out of them, they don't get any money. It's kind of like a little scheme going on. Since he's a nightmare spirit, I was thinking about making him be in the Unseelie court style of fae. You know, the more mischievous, almost malicious side of fairy species, because in the fae realm there are two courts, the Unseelie and Seelie court. Seelie courts are like your pixies, the high elves, you know, just not really malicious, more mischievous, and sometimes even helpful fairies. And then there's the Unseelie court, which is your baby kidnappers and, you know, what we would consider evil fairies. I'm making him lawful neutral, as he really only follows the rules for the sake of not getting found out or caught, because, you know, he's a fairy and he isn't really supposed to be living here legally. Other than that, he doesn't really like humans very much. Understandably, he thinks they're all kind of shallow and doesn't like to get involved with them. I gave him a John Mulaney sweater from the skit The One Thing You Can't Replace, because I feel like he would be the kind to watch the skits on YouTube when he has time for himself. He refuses to cut his hair and likes to braid it to keep it out of his face. But as much as he tries to do that, there is always this one strand that's always sticking in front of his eye, and it drives him absolutely mad, so he can really only keep it up for so long before he just completely wrecks his ponytail. I decided on the name Owen because his original name was Jason, that was the name that his father gave him, but he decided to go more towards his mother's Irish roots when renaming himself. Other than that, he's pretty much done. For the next character, I was thinking Goblin. Goblin all the way. I love goblins so much. More specifically, the Unseelie court side of the species. A lower class species of fae, kind of like how, in Steven Universe, the gems, there's like amethyst, topazes, and rubies. They're all kind of like soldiers and the muscle of the group, but not really upper class. I already knew Owen was going to be very, very gay, so I felt I needed to give him a chaotic neutral partner, and so I got the idea for this little guy. When Owen started settling the campground for future use, he ran into trouble with the local population of goblins, where he would meet this character. They've been at each other's throats at first, mostly because the goblins think that Owen is trying to settle their land, while Owen is really just looking for a place to sleep. and so they do not like each other first, not in the slightest, but they end up getting along eventually, and even end up falling in love. It's a cute little story. A headcanon I've always sort of had with fairies is that they're all technically gender ambiguous, or at least don't have a fixed gender in the way that us humans do. They can switch it whenever they need to. In a mythology, they usually only present one way if it's to sway humans, like, Lady Fairy wooing the man so that she can do whatever she wants with him, that sort of thing. Goblins are no different in this case. This one in particular is male presenting, being he/they. I wanted to give them a scrappy, kind of mismatched look with their clothes because, for a bit of context, he likes to take all his clothes from stuff the campers leaves behind because he thinks it's really pretty. He doesn't really know how to style them, but he thinks they're pretty colors and he wants to wear them, so sue him. But oh my lord, it was hard making such a short character like this look older than 19. I have went through 15 other models because this man is 3 foot and 4 quarters and he is willing to fight God and or become him. Oh my god, I love him so much, but drawing him, making him look 45, was almost a death of me. The way that they like to help their husband out with the campground is they will scare off the campers at night, often waiting for a signal by Owen that he's done feeding so that he's out of the room, and he'll sneak into the cabin, dressed in a scrappy monster loincloth like you would see in D&D, and he chases them off the property. Kind of like how a cat would chase off a mouse. He doesn't really wear rings, since it's hard to get one on that will fit around his claws comfortably, not to mention the fact that it's either always going to be too small or too big because he has to fit it over his claw first. But he does like to wear earrings, and so they have matching earrings on corresponding ears. He also has another separate earring on his other ear that is from his family. Everyone in his family has one of them. It's kind of like a little tradition that once they reach of age, they all get their ears pierced. It's a cute little thing. They're a little bit less lawful than Owen in the sense that they don't really know the law, nor do they really care to find it out because they do whatever they want. However, they are the chiller one of the two, more down to earth than Owen, and often being the shoulder for Owen to cry on when things get messy. A chaotic but emotionally mature character, if you will. For their name, I decided Bentley because it's just something that was so them and just fit their vibe. But other than that, he's done. I'm really happy with the result. To wrap up this little family dynamic, I decided they needed a kid. So they have a 12-year-old girl. When designing her, I wanted to give her an edgy, teenage girl on Reddit kind of vibe, if that makes sense. Giving her a cell phone that she's primarily only on to use on social media and just likes to keep herself to herself, doesn't really talk that much. She primarily takes after Bentley, having their nose, teeth, tail, and claws, but she also inherited Owen's spirit and his hair. Often having her hair down, but doesn't really like to have it in her face, much like him. She finds herself deeply enamored by humans, unlike her father's, often considering herself to be just like them because she was raised around them. She goes to a public school. She loves the things they create and they do, and she just wants to do what she can to be a part of it, despite the chaos that humans often also inevitably bring. She wears a glamour around her neck to appear more human while at school and in public, but this glamour isn't the highest quality. The Fae market charges a hefty amount of coins for glamour stones, so they could only get a handful of cheaper ones. It makes her look human just fine, but it can't change her anatomy entirely, just cloak it. So instead of having regular hands while wearing a glamour, the fingers only separate the way her claws do, making it look like she's doing that hand thing from Star Trek anytime she moves her fingers. This also goes to her teeth and her tail and her nose, in the sense of it really just hides it, it doesn't really get rid of it. Her tail would just be invisible, but her nose, because the glamour is trying to hide it, just ends up looking bigger than it really is because it's trying to make her look more human. Because of this, she often wears a mask to try and hide this because she was bullied a lot for it whenever she was a kid, and she just does not like being seen with it. She thinks it's ugly in her mind. Bentley is a bit more of a chill parent with her. In terms of their dynamic. Not really giving her much restriction or what she can do and can't do. Kind of like the, oh, you want to get your ears pierced? What kind of piercing kind of parent, you know? Whereas Owen is more restrictive and likes to keep a low profile so none of them get discovered. Which, from his perspective, is because she doesn't really have a birth certificate because she never went to a hospital. She's half goblin, for Christ's sake. Nor is she or Bentley technically legal citizens, because again, goblins. So he'll do anything to make sure they all blend in. She doesn't really like this kind of approach because in her mind, why should we have to hide? We're perfectly normal people. But she's also a teenager and doesn't understand the full length of how absolutely terrible humanity can be sometimes. And so Owen tries his best to try and, rein her in whenever he can, but it doesn't always work. She also loves to sing, often going to singing lessons every Saturday and Thursday, because she just absolutely adores the style of singing often found in Sweden and that sort of thing, that little lilting thing. She wants to learn how to do it, and so she has a teacher that tries to teach her. I decided to give her the name Tori because it just felt like a good name for this edgy little kid. It felt cutesy, and also I've been rereading and watching Heartstopper, and Tori is one of my favorite characters, so fight me on that if you will. Other than that, she is done. And oh my god, she's so adorable. I love her to death. There we are, 3 characters made and plotted. I really enjoyed planning them all out and having fun looking into the species and lore and stuff. I really love fairies and I really love cryptids, so this is really fun to look into. I would really love to turn this into a webtoon when I got around to it, but I am still working on the first episode for another webtoon I'm making, which if you'd like a video on that, please tell me in the comments. It's a women love dark romance, so do with that what you will. Otherwise, if you stayed this long for the video, thanks. It really means a lot to me. I love drawing fantasy creatures and fairies, and would love to be able to do more of this in the future. Life's too short for me to be serious, so I love to indulge in a bit of whimsy when I get the chance. Thanks so much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!